Ladies and gentlemen, John Waters. You are in fact Scottish, aren't you?
Yes, by birth. Oh, well, my father's Scottish, and I lived there for about 3 years as a small child.
What made you decide, in fact, to come to Australia?
Well, I have an uncle, my father's brother, who'd been to Australia, told me about it. I think the main thing was that it seemed like such a hell of a long way to go for 10 quid. And, you know, which still applied at the time. And also, I was a bit sick and tired of wandering around in the drizzle in England, which one has to do continually. And so I thought, well, I'll have a working holiday, I'll pay me 10 quid, come out here, and I'll work in some of the places that my uncle had told me about, and save my fare to come back after 2 years, because they take your passport away from you. And but that was 12 years ago. Something went wrong and I'm still here.
Yeah. Was this uncle, your Uncle Tom?
Yeah.
Was it? He was a bit of a character, wasn't he?
Well, yes, Tom's a bit of a legend in the outback of Queensland. See, what he did when he came here, and I think he spent about 8 years altogether in Australia, was he worked as a bookkeeper on stations. And Tom's probably the most eccentric person that I could ever hope to meet. I haven't met Jack properly yet. But
Oh, you will. Oh, you will.
And when I arrived in Brisbane, Tom had given me the name of a pastoral company. He said, you get a job in the outback with them. And I arrived in this chap's office, Clark and Tate in Brisbane, and said, I'm John Waters. And he sort of went, Waters? I said, yeah, Tom Waters? He said, oh, yes, what do you want? You know, it was a bit like that. And I said, well, Tom told me I could come see you, get a job. He said, yes, you can go where Tom went. He said, it's a long way away from everywhere. That's where we sent Tom. But he even managed to create havoc there. And I got out to the station and discovered that Tom had walked around in the middle of the night, stark naked, reading a tartan-covered Bible. And he'd also covered the walls of his room in tartan. He had tartan tablecloth. And he'd sort of, you know, I think he's got a special tartan paint that he sort of paints things with, because he's a Scottish nationalist, really. You know, I think he'd like to saw England off, you know, and just sort of float it out into the North Sea a bit.
And was he the man who also jumped ship?
Oh, yes. He was going back to England against his will, really, because, you know, he liked this country so much. And I think he decided that, you know, he could still see the land, and he probably might be able to make it if he jumped overboard. And he did, jumped off a Cunard liner. And, of course, it takes him about 3 or 4 hours to turn the thing around. Unfortunately, they put him in the ship's brig for the rest of the voyage. But, you know, he's really not dangerous at all. I think when they fished him out of the water, he just said, I was going for a wee swim. You know, well, that's all. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, is there?
But so in fact, you retraced his footsteps and you went to the...
Yeah, and I went to Bimera Station.
You became a Jackaroo, didn't you?
Well, not exactly a Jackaroo. That's rather a romantic way of putting it. They couldn't really work out what to do with me. I said I'd do anything and perhaps learn how to do the books on the station. But instead I ended up sort of mending fences with bits of wire, which they do very well out in Queensland. I mean, the Bushy's toolkit really consists of fencing wire, and he can do anything, you know. They can probably, you know, build a replica of the Eiffel Tower. They can do anything with fencing wire, and that's what I ended up doing. But, you know, on my arrival there, I didn't know what to expect. I stepped out of this train. Of course, I arrived in January, and 2 weeks later I was in the middle of Queensland, and I stepped out of the train. The temperature in Longreach was about 115. And I stepped out of the air-conditioned train and sort of fell over, and a guy sort of came over, picked me up, said, are you the new hand at Bimera? I said, yeah, I suppose so. And said, oh, come with me. We went straight to the pub and drank about 15 beers, because you've got to keep the, you know, the same rate. And then we got into a utility and drove to Bimera Station, all the while drinking stubbies of beer, because you've got a little thing on the dashboard, takes the top off, drains it in a few seconds, and then holds it out and throws it over the roof. We were driving at night, and the headlights light up the stubbies. They're like cat's eyes, all the way along the side of the road. For 75 miles, they were unbroken, I kid you not, from Longreach to Bimera. And I went through the sort of initiation. You know, I mean, that was the first thing, I suppose, the drinking.
That's right. And you collapsed under that one, did you? I mean,
yeah, well, I tried to socialise after I got there, but I couldn't, you know, I couldn't pronounce my name or anything. So they put me to bed, and then they woke me up the next morning and saying, you're in the cricket team. And we were going out to play a team called Stonehenge. And we... I thought that was fitting, yeah.
Not Stonewall, Stonehenge, yeah.
And we went out to this little patch of dirt with a strip of concrete in the middle with some ratty old matting on it. and commenced this bizarre cricket match, you know, with people with big, broad-brimmed hats stepping out to the crease and all borrowed pads and gloves and things. And I think I passed the test because I realised that, you know, they're expecting something of me. I mean, I've got to make runs. You know, being a pom, you know, that was worse than just being a new hand. And so I discovered that there was a guy fielding for the Stonehenge team at about sort of a deepish mid-off. And every time I played the ball anywhere near him, he never moved. It would go about 3 feet away from him. It'd be trickling past, and everybody would be shouting out to him. And he never moved, and somebody else would run and field it. It took a long time. And then I did it again, same thing, you know, about 3 feet, 2 runs, scuttling backwards and forwards. And suddenly I realised what he was doing, because there was a telegraph pole in the middle of the cricket pitch, and the shadow of the telegraph pole was just falling over his face, and he was not moving for anybody. And he sort of progressed it. He went from mid-off to cover point, you know, as the shadow of the telegraph pole moved.
How did you fare as a Jackaroo? I mean, was there initiation involved in that, in the actual job
well,
itself?
I was hopeless. I just didn't know enough about the game, and they told me things that, you know, they have what they call a lambing season, where they get the young lambs and they do all sorts of sadistic things to them with their teeth.
Really?
So they told me, yeah, you pick the lamb up and you sort of, I won't go into it anyway. Yeah, they told me I had to do it.
Yeah, well, really?
Yeah, and then they brought a lamb up and said, right, there you go, you know. And it doesn't taste too bad, you know. And I sort of, you know, thought I'd better. And then just as I was about to do it, he said, don't worry, we've got a special instrument we do it with nowadays. Took it away. And they made me grab hold of a steer. I mean, the thing has grown. Every time I tell the story, it's become like about 5 feet tall. But I suppose it was a sort of heavy, you know, but like that, young cow. And they got it in a stockyard and said, we're going to brand it, grab it, you know, and just throw it on the ground. And I said, oh, all right. It didn't, you know, look all that big, and it was very quiet standing there. So I went over, and I didn't know which end to grab, but I thought I'd go for the horns, so I grabbed hold of them. And suddenly I was off, all the way around the stockyard like this, dragged around like this, thrown up in the air, and I'm hanging on, and the guys, I sort of looked up, and they're sitting on the stockyard fence rolling cigarettes, you know. And they said, stick your fingers in its nose, that's always works. So I'm trying to find its nose, and my shirt was completely ripped off my back, and a red raw.
Was the parting by mutual consent, John?
Oh, absolutely. They were just as glad to get rid of me as I was to go. I think I stayed about 4 months there.
Yeah. Moving on to your acting career, I made the point in the introduction that you've made a successful career out of playing rather sort of sinister and brooding characters. Do your children ever worry about what's become of their dad?
Oh, yeah. Initially, I think my children's reaction to seeing me on television was that, you know, everybody's father's on television. Why not? You know, because their father's on television, so, you know, their mate's dad's on television as well. And when they got to the age where they realised that wasn't quite true, they'd been through a lot of role-playing, and seen me at it. They've been in studios, they've been in theatres, but you can always take it that step further where they're really not sure where the role-playing starts and ends. And well, Dracula, for example, you see, I mean, I've had to sort of shake my son Ivan out of a catatonic state after he's watched Dracula movies. He's really terrified, and when he was very small, I didn't let him watch them. I let my daughter watch, and she's okay, you know. I went up to her after a particularly creepy movie one night and I thought I'd just check her and see if she's all right in bed. And I sort of looked and she seemed to be asleep, and I said, Becky? There was no sound. And I leaned over and said, Becky, and she went, like that. And I went, so she sort of...
Monsters, aren't they? Yeah,
backfired at me.
monsters.
But Ivan's, you know, a little bit more worried. He saw a rehearsal of Dracula, and I went stake in my chest, went down into the coffin, and the music reached a great crescendo, crashing chords, and then there was dead silence, and then from the back of this empty theatre, a little voice came out saying, "You all right in there, Daddy?" just a little bit, not quite sure.
The latest thing that you've done, actually, in film is Break 'em Around, which, in fact, has got very, very good reviews at the Cannes Film Festival. Yeah. And in it you play, was it an arrogant officer?
Yes. Yeah, I play an intelligence officer who's a sort of agent provocateur in the whole intrigue of the trial. He's, you know, perhaps partly responsible for some of the trouble they get into. And Ted Woodward plays Breaker Morant, subject of some dispute at the time, because a lot of Australians are under the misapprehension that Breaker Morant is an Australian, but he wasn't. He was, in fact, an Englishman. You know, I think Ted Was Dead Right. I hope, is it doing well?
Doing very well indeed. Yeah, I mean, lots of sales. You know, and we hope it does very well on the international market. But let's have a clip. The clip that we've got, in fact, is a court-martial sequence where you, in fact, are being court-martialed. Let's have a look at it.
I can't wait to see what happens next.
That's right, because in fact you've not seen it before.
No, I haven't seen it at all.
Let's go back to the Dracula. Well, let's hope it does well.
Yeah,
let's hope it's one
certainly.
of the breakthrough films. Let's go back to the Dracula thing which we mentioned, because how in fact did you get the part?
Well, I heard vaguely of the play, but the man who directed it here, Sir Robert Helpman, and I happened to be on the same plane going to Perth, and I was in fact sitting next to him, and you know, I was trying to hear myself think above the rattle of the jewellery next to me, and and I was aware who he was, and I think he was aware who I was, and I was dying to introduce myself to him, but I just didn't sort of, you know, bring myself to do it somehow. I felt sort of presumptuous, and I'm always overawed by knights. But anyway, he said, I'm Sir Robert Helpman, you're John Waters, I know, and I'm interested in doing this play Dracula. Told me all about it and the sort of style of play it was, and that he thought that I would make a good Dracula for Australia. And that was it, really. After that, we went to Perth and never spoke any more about it. It was several months later that I actually was rung and got the offer. So, you know, the rest of the time we didn't talk about that. We were judging a beauty contest.
A beauty contest?
Yeah.
Oh.
It was, it's a thing, you know, I accepted the job of being a judge in a beauty contest, not really knowing very much about them, apart from having seen them on television, and I said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And I was publicising a movie at the same time, so I thought that'll help. But the experience, actually, when I got there was quite horrendous to me. You know, it was just so awful. They even made the girls show us their fingernails. You know? I was hiding.
Well, they paraded showing their fingernails?
Yeah, they walked backwards and forwards in swimming costumes, and they were made to turn round, and they were made to show us their fingernails, and, you know, mine being chewed to the quick, I don't feel qualified to judge anybody's fingernails. And then, you know, placing them in order of 1, 2, 3, I found it all rather a sort of distasteful experience. I certainly wouldn't do another one.
Did you have to interview them?
Yes, and it was a bit like, I imagine, the sort of Gestapo grilling room. There are about 4 desks, and they were set in different corners of a room, and the 4 judges each sat at a desk, and the girls would come in groups of 4, and then sort of rotate with a new one coming in, and we'd talk to them for 7 minutes, and I mean, that was on a stopwatch. There's a guy who said, right, stop talking, everybody move around one table. And you'd sort of be in mid-conversation. And I couldn't think what to say. I mean, you know, what are your hobbies? And they were all terrified, of course. And so I just asked them if they were interested in cricket and took it from there. I didn't get many takers on that subject. But
no, you wouldn't. No, it's amazing, isn't it? When you ask them their ambition, they all want to be brain surgeons.
Yeah, that's right.
Or glamorous brain surgeons.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I mean, I hate them as well. I've only ever done one in my life, and I suddenly thought they all do look alike, actually. Yeah. And you've got to pick out one thing that might be different. So I picked out the ones who were short-sighted and they got small hands. But my girl came nowhere, I must say.
No, I didn't know.
You're also, of course, the other thing, we talked about the sort of the roles you play in movies and on television, the sort of rather sort of sadistic roles you play. But also you must be the only actor I know who's played Dracula and also done play school as well.
Yeah.
You enjoy play school, don't you?
Oh, I love it. Love it. Quite often people say to me, you know, why do you still do play school, implying that I shouldn't be doing it anymore, but I don't think it's any less important to entertain and inform young children than it is adults, and it's so enjoyable. I mean, I think we have more fun than the kids watching.
Really?
Oh,
what
yes.
do you mean?
Oh, you should see some of our rehearsals. Yeah. we like to slip in a little bit of something for the young mother back home.
Yeah.
You know, and
John, I'll play that back to you and then rephrase it. But we know what you mean. Carry on.
Oh, well, we've had some quite famous occasions of double entendre, you know, sort of like the one that I just came out with, which, you know, sometimes they're on purpose and sometimes they're not, but sort of keeps the adult audience interested.
And what about your animal imitation?
No, I have to do every animal, yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
What are you best at?
The albatross is not bad. I do quite a good albatross.
How do you do an albatross? That's very good.
That actually...
That was a very good... You didn't quite catch that. Come over it again. Do an albatross effect. Very good albatross.
No, that actually is a mating call.
Oh.
So, in about 5 minutes' time, there are going to be 53 albatrosses coming, flying through the studio. Yeah, I copied that off a film. I do elephants and frogs, I suppose.
What's your elephant like?
Well, it's sort of trunk here. A little bit like an albatross, but the movement is different, isn't it?
And what about the frog?
Well, the frog's got a song of his own, you see. It sort of goes like this. Mr. Frog jumped out of his pond one day and found himself in the rain. Said he, I'll get wet and I might catch a cold. So we jumped in the pond again.
Well, to prove your versatility, the next thing you're going to do, and you're rehearsing for now, is in fact a new musical comedy called They're Playing Our Song.
They're Playing Our Song,
That's right. Marvin Hamlish and Carol Bayer-Sager.
You got it right.
And Sager-Bayer or Bayer-Sager.
Carol Bayer-Sager, and it's the play itself is by Neil Simon, you know, who wrote all those funny things, The Odd Couple and the New York humour. It should be good. We're having this.
Yeah, and you're going to sing in it.
Yeah. Yes, I've sung on stage before, and I sort of sing. You know, in the context of musical shows. I'm petrified about singing on television, but I do my best. It's the first song in the show is called "Falling." That's what I'm going to do.